So I'm about at that point where I'm 6 months in with the A6400, as in I've been using it for 6 months. And I figured it's a good time to do a little update video because sometimes things can change. My opinions about this camera might change. There might be some niggling issues that I should tell you guys about, things I like, things I don't like. So that's what I figured I'd talk about today. Now, the big elephant in the room obviously is going to be the flip screen, and this is the absolute hands down best thing I like the A6400 for. Not so much for vlogging, because I don't vlog that much, as you probably know if you watch this channel, but for shooting videos specifically like this. So right now I'm shooting on the A7 III and I have no idea if it's recording or not. Memory card could have filled up, battery could have died, can't tell. With this, you can tell. And I love the flip screen. I wish every Sony camera had it, and I hope that every Sony camera in the future does have it. A7S IV, I'm looking at you. Actually, let's be honest, that camera doesn't even exist. That's never coming. It's going to be like the A7 IV, then the A7 V, the A7R95, and then we'll get the A7S III. Colors. Color matching with the A7 III matches almost perfectly, and that makes this the perfect B camera. So if you're shooting two different scenes or two different angles and you need to match colors, you don't have to faff around in post and do all that, 6400 is absolutely a perfect camera to complement the A7 III. And I use it all the time specifically as a B camera for exactly that situation. And you probably guys can't even tell when I'm shooting a video with the A7 III or the A6400. You're not going to be able to tell the difference from YouTube just from full frame versus APS-C. But the colors might give it away. If I shoot on the A6300 or the A6000, the colors on that are from an older style of sensor and they just looked terrible. That's where the whole debate with Sony versus Canon colors came in and all that kind of thing. So I don't think that's much of an argument anymore, because with the A6400, the A7 III, or the newer Sony cameras, the color that Sony has been using is way better and yeah, matches the A7 III perfectly. The screen, so yeah, it's got a flippy screen, which is great, but the screen on this is just as naff as the A7 III. And what I mean by that is, in terms of the resolution, if you've ever used a Fuji camera, you've ever used something like the EOS R, the resolution of the screen on those things is incredible. This is, I think, 960,000 dots, and the A7 III is the same. So you might think, oh, nearly 1 million dots, that's quite a high resolution. The EOS R is, I want to say, over 3 million. I might be wrong, it might be 2 million, but it's even still, it's at least twice as higher resolution as this is. The X-T3 is close to 1.1 million dots, but if you use it and compare it to this, it looks like a huge difference. So the screen resolution on this is just not good, as well as the resolution, the exposure and the way that this reads exposure just is not good. And yes, I know you can use the histogram, same thing with the A7 III, but that doesn't justify the screen not reading out your exposure properly. You can look at the exposure on here, think it's fine, look through the EVF, and it's completely different. Much like the A7 III, and it really frustrates me sometimes, especially for when you're shooting video, because if you're trying to nail the exposure on something, you just can't use the screen unless you use the histogram, I know. Again, shouldn't excuse it for being a poor quality screen, so bear that in mind. Also, I just don't like the aspect ratio of this. This is quite a wide screen, and the A7 III is more of a square style screen. I just prefer that square look. Don't like the screen on this, which is a shame because it's a flip screen. I really hope Sony in future models just puts a little bit of a higher res screen in there. It can make a world of the difference when you're trying to focus on things. If you're using manual focus and you want to use focus peaking, even just to view back your images after and just see if, is that eye in focus? Yeah, you can do it on the A7 III and the A6400, but until you've used something else, you don't really realize how bad this actually is. My friend Joe has an X Pro 2, and every time I look at the back of the screen on the camera or when I take an image with it, just wowed by that image because the resolution of that screen is so high. That's above 2 million dots, and it's just isn't good. I just talked a lot about that screen, but I'm quite passionate about having a nice quality screen on the back, and doesn't have it. I have to say that I am one of those people that loves the full frame look, the depth of field, the increased light sensitivity on the sensor because it's a bigger sensor. But given the right lenses with this is an incredible camera for certain situations. I rebought this Sigma 30mm f1.4, which I'm going to do another update video on, I think, because it's been a couple of years since I owned that lens. And with this, I'd say that's my favorite combo. It's such a cinematic looking lens. Even at f2.8 or f2, it looks so nice. The background separation, the drop off, just the rendition of the image that's coming from that lens is beautiful. So with the right lenses, this is an incredible little camera still. And I do have to say as well, I actually am a fan of using full frame glass on the A6400. Yes, it's an APS-C camera, it's a crop camera, so full frame glass is going to be a 1.5 times crop. But in certain situations, i.e. a wedding, you're using a 70-200, that 70-200 is now a 105-300, which is very useful in certain situations, like a wedding. So something to bear in mind as well. Full frame glass definitely works 100%. If it's Sony natively on here, autofocus is impeccable. It's quick, accurate, snappy, stays locked on, and you get the extra reach too. With the A6400, the 120 frames per second video is just as good. The quality is exactly the same as the A7 III, as is the 4K quality video. So if you put them side by side, using lenses that have the same focal length or similar, you're gonna have a really hard time telling the difference between the two. And I say that honestly, 4K and the 120 frames per second video I use on a very regular basis, and both are fantastic. Yeah, great camera for that. If you need to shoot a lot of B-roll, you need to shoot a lot of slow-mo, and you can't afford the A7 III, then the A6400 is gonna be a great option still. Unlimited recording time is a very big thing. So before you couldn't go past 29 minutes and 59 seconds. At that point, it just cuts, the video's done. You'd have to then restart it, and it's happened to me multiple times, especially with the A7 III. I'd be recording a video, finished it, go to look at the camera, not recording. And now I have to go back, watch where it ended, and redo that whole bit. So you don't have the problems with that happening with this camera here, because you can go right past 30 minutes, 29 minutes and 59 seconds, and it won't stop unless your memory card fills up or your battery runs out or it overheats. But it doesn't overheat. I haven't had any problems with that. That was a good segue, wasn't it? Yeah, I haven't had any problems with this overheating, especially in 4K. Actually, just before you're watching this, well, as you're watching this, I just shot another video right before I'm shooting this video, and it was about 40 minutes long in terms of recording, and the camera didn't even warm up at all, to be honest with you. So I personally haven't had any issues with this overheating and turning off. So my experience, yours might be different, someone else's might be different, but for me, no issues. So the autofocus is better on this than it is on the A7 III. It's not a huge difference, but I do find it's a lot more accurate. The A7 III isn't bad by any means, but this is just a little bit better. I mean, that's really all there is to say about it. There's a ton of tests out there, but yeah, take it from me. I have both, and the autofocus is better on this. Here's a weird one. So I used to own the A6300, I sold that and then put in a bit of money and bought the A6400. I find the battery better on this. Don't know why. I'll give you an example. I used to shoot, I still shoot, weddings, and I'd go through, I wanna say 5 to 7 little tiny Sony batteries in a day. And now I don't go through any more than 3 to 5. So something changed, whether the chip in this, the newer chip, whatever you want to call it, is more efficient on battery life, I don't know. But you use less batteries, and the batteries on these little batteries aren't that great. So if I can get more power out of one battery, I'm happy. Another thing to do with batteries that seems to be weird, and I don't know if Sony did it on purpose, I own a lot of third-party batteries. What do I have here? This is a RAV power battery. So RAV power battery, Sony battery, they're both MPFW50 batteries, or that starter battery. This one's technically meant to hold more. So this is an 1100 milliamp, and this is a 1020 milliamp. But this battery lasts longer than this one. These don't last very long anymore, and I don't know why that is. Maybe something to do with Sony knowing that you're using a third-party battery? I don't know. But take it from me, first-hand experience, third-party batteries don't seem to last as long as they did with the A6300. Okay, here's a big frustration for me. Coming from the A6300 to the A6400, you'd figure, oh, that's an upgrade. Why would you remove the 1 and 2 buttons on here? I use those as custom settings all the time. So 1 would be 24 frames a second and 2 would be 120, or vice versa. One's 4K, one's 1080. I personally use those a lot. You've probably watched my video on my settings, pop that one up there for the A7 III, and I specifically talk about using the 1 and 2 buttons. You don't have that on the dial, they removed it. Instead you have the MR, and it's all digitally done now, so you can go in and pick one of 3 settings now to use from. That takes longer, so you have to flip to MR, then go through and select the one you want, then click OK, whereas before it was just go to 2, go to 1. So maybe it's a personal preference, maybe it's an England issue that only affects me, but I really miss having the 1 and the 2 there. and it frustrates me not having it. It also is frustrating because before you could look down and know, okay, I know that 2 is always 4K, I know that 1 is always 1080. Now I look at it and go, I'm in MR. I have no idea whether I'm in 4K, 1080. I have no idea whether I'm recording 120, 24. I can't remember that far back. So hopefully you get my point. And here's another niggling little issue, again, probably just for myself, but having both the A7 III and the A6400, the A7 III has, and yeah, I know it's more of a prosumer camera or pro camera, and this is considered like your mid prosumer camera. This doesn't have any, well, this has 1 dial on it, or 2 really, if you want to include the wheel there. So you have a dial up here, and then you have the wheel here. On the A7 III, you have another one right here. So I normally have those assigned to my shutter speed, my ISO, and then my aperture. So I can control all those just by moving things around. There's only 2 here, so that means something has to give, and it makes things a little bit more complicated to change things. So it means for my ISO, you have to click to the right, then spin the dial, then select what I want to select. And it takes longer. I would love another little dial there. I guess really that isn't a problem with the A6400. That's coming from the experience of someone who has the A7 III as well. If you've never had the A7 III, then you wouldn't know what's what. The grass is always greener, I suppose. And then the final thing, I guess, is I really don't just pick this camera up to go and shoot with. If I'm going out to shoot something, even just for fun, I will take the A7 III. This is never even given any thought to being the camera that I would take and then not take the A7 III, and I don't know why that is. So yeah, I just don't really use this that much other than for if I'm doing a YouTube video or as a B camera. It doesn't ever get used as an A camera. Still a great camera, just I prefer to use the A7 III. Give you a prime example here. I had a client shoot the other day, shooting at a gym, and I needed a shot, or 2 different shots. I needed one on a tripod, and then I needed another one on a gimbal. We weren't doing them both at the same time, but what I ended up doing was I shot the stuff I needed on a tripod with the A7 III, and I could have just had this ready to go on the gimbal, but I didn't. I chose to have the A7 III locked off on the tripod, and then when I needed to do the gimbal shot, I took it off, balanced it on the gimbal, and then used it on that. I could have just used this. I don't know why that is. It's in my head that I just want to use the A7 III. So in short, this is still a great camera for a B camera, or even if you don't own the A7 III, you might really like this as an A camera too. 4K video is fantastic, 1080p, fantastic, exactly the same quality as the A7 III. Don't let anyone tell any difference. I can't really tell any substantial difference between the two when you look at them. Low light is obviously going to be way better on the A7 III. It's quite substantially different on this. So you don't get anywhere near the same low light abilities as you do with the A7 III, and that's to be expected. You've got a full frame sensor, you've got a crop sensor, so that's no surprise there. Maybe that's part of the reason why I just want to pick up the A7 III and never want to just pick this up and shoot with this. So yeah, not a terrible camera by any means, still a good camera after 6 months. I just only use it for specific situations, and not really for everything I use the A7 III for. If you have the A7 III and you have this, maybe you're the same. If you don't have an A7 III, then a lot of what I've talked about, you might be thinking that guy rambles and talks a lot and his points aren't valid to me. And if that's the case, I'm sorry for wasting your time, but it needs to be said. So there we go. That's my thoughts on the A6400. 6 months later, 7 months probably by the time this video is posted. Appreciate you watching today. If there's something else that annoys you with the A6400 or something that you think maybe can fix some of my issues or maybe make me want to use this a little bit more, pop it down below in the comment section there. We can have a little bit of a conversation, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See you later.